Welcome to the It To Hoover SEC Baseball Podcast, Episode 6, hosted by Jake Nichols and myself, Mitch Davis. Jake, come on in. Welcome. How was the opening weekend of college baseball season?
Man, it was great. We saw a lot of upsets, a lot of things happening. And from my vantage point, man, Tennessee just opened things extremely strong. Obviously got the 3-0 sweep over Georgia Southern. Then came out, had a rain delay on Tuesday night against Tennessee Tech. And that ended up, I think, being a closer game when it was called than people expected. But then on Wednesday, of course, the Vols turned around, beat UNC Asheville 16-1. And man, you talk about a guy that's making the rounds all over social media right now, Ben Joyce, who came into Knoxville from Walters State, from nearby in Farragut, actually, which is, for those that don't know, pretty much in West Knoxville. But man, the dude was topping 103 on the radar gun. So just outstanding production from him this weekend for the Vols.
The thing about Tennessee is it was one of those teams that when I was watching baseball this weekend, I was going, oh shit, Tennessee's really, really good at baseball. Talk about their pitching as well, because I don't think their pitching got enough credit for the job that they did.
Yeah, it absolutely didn't. They've got a couple really strong arms in Chase Burns and Chase Dollander. I honestly can't remember how you pronounce his name. But, yeah, they were absolutely outstanding that Friday and Saturday. And then struggled a bit on Sunday. And then we saw, I think, similar struggles from Hollis Fanning on Tuesday night. But overall, really strong arms out of this staff. Most of this staff got around 98, 99, 100 through this past week. And then, of course, like I said, Ben Joyce topping out at 103.5, which is apparently more than any MLB pitcher last season. So an absolutely outstanding effort from him. And, this is even without having Seth Halverson and Blade Tidwell back from injury. So right now, Tennessee's pitching staff is coming out as hot as expected. And, Tony Vitello talked about the fact that, they are glad to have this much talent. And it's certainly paying off so far. And I think could take this team a really long way, considering the power that we've seen from them at the plate.
Jake, across the SEC, obviously it was a big weekend in the state of Mississippi. Out of the three D1 programs in the state of Mississippi, 86,000 people saw a college baseball game this weekend. Now, talk about what you saw out of the rest of the SEC, and what are your biggest surprises from that weekend?
Yeah, I think one of my biggest surprises, right, has to be Arkansas, given the fact that they open up with that 3-2 loss to Illinois State. Obviously, we're able to rebound, but, that and then Vanderbilt as well, losing to Oklahoma State. I think a couple of surprising losses there that caught me a little off guard, but those were the ones that stood out to me the most. But overall, I think that, it shows how tight this conference is going to be.
Jake, I think one of the biggest surprises for me was Mississippi State this weekend. I think what we saw out of the Bulldogs was a team that lost a lot during the offseason, was a team that, lost a couple of their core guys, Tanner Allen, Jake Mangrum from the national championship team. The Bulldogs lost those guys. They lost 2 out of 3 to Long Beach State. They looked good against Pine Bluff on Tuesday before all the crazy weather. I think it was Wednesday because of the weather. But Mississippi State is a team that also, like Vanderbilt, I expected a lot out of this season. And out of those two teams that took a loss this weekend, I think Mississippi State is still in the best chance to get to Omaha. I think this year for Vanderbilt might be a year where the Commodores lose early in either the regional or the super regionals.
Yeah, which that's crazy to think about, right? Considering the development that Tim Corbin has had within his program. But hey, that's life whenever you lose Jack Leiter and Kumar Rocker. And, now, of course, Rocker is trying to still get to the majors after the Mets passed on him. And we saw what all happened there. But Jack Leiter is, working out with the Rangers right now. And, we'll see what happens, obviously, with everything with the MLB discussion right now. But yeah, like you said, I think, we expected more out of Vandy. And, How about Mississippi State with, like you said, losing 2 out of 3 to Long Beach, but the fact that they still had a great outing out of Landon Sims too, and still weren't able to get it done because, I mean, he was kind of their go-to guy in that College World Series run.
Is this safe to say? Because in my eyes, it's safe to say that Arkansas, Ole Miss, and Tennessee are the 3 best teams in the conference as of after week 1. I know a lot of people are probably going to hit us up on Twitter going, "You're crazy, talking best teams in the SEC after week 1, after opening weekend." But hey, we live in the SEC and we're in the Southeastern Conference, which means we're going to talk about the best teams each and every week. And to me, Ole Miss, Arkansas, and Tennessee look like the 3 best teams in college baseball, with LSU not far behind. But they took a midweek loss last night to Louisiana Tech on the road.
Yeah, I was about to mention that as well. I think that is fair to say about those 3 teams right now, that I think they are the best. And I think you're right on point with that. But I am surprised we're not talking about this LSU team right now because, we talked to Paul Maneri before the season, talked about the job that he's seen from Jay Johnson so far, taking over for Maneri. And this LSU team was ranked number 8 in the country, went down to Ruston last night and lost. And man, those Bulldogs were excited, and they had a right to be. Upsetting kind of, I think, what would be the flagship program in the state on their home field. That's a big deal and a big early loss for Johnson. And now we'll see whether they can bounce back. And I agree, as far as talent, LSU is right there with the best in the conference. They've got Dylan Cruz, they've got Trey Morgan, a lot of guys that Tennessee had to deal with last season. But we'll see going forward. But I think your observation is absolutely right, that Tennessee.
I'll tell you what, Jake, that pitching staff at Ole Miss is top notch. I think that when you look at the pitching staffs across the SEC, and you got a bullpen and you got a starting rotation like Mike Bianco has down there at Ole Miss with McDaniel. They've got, freaking their midweek guy and Jack Washburn threw for 6 innings. Another amazing performance, shutout performance from him. Arkansas State did score some runs a little bit later, but Ole Miss, 3 straight freaking run rule games. They did 2 against the opening opponent. Top that off with that amazing bullpen and the starting rotation from Ole Miss. Ole Miss is probably, if not the best team in the country, they're second best, right behind Texas. Now, and another team that's going to be to watch out for as we progress in the season is Kentucky. Kentucky went down to Jacksonville State, swept Jacksonville State, who's picked to win the Ohio Valley this season. They beat Bellarmine, which is predicted to win the ASUN this season. And now Kentucky's got a major opportunity next weekend as they welcome the Horned Frogs from TCU to Lexington. Kentucky's a team that when you and I travel to Hoover later this season, we could see Kentucky playing on Wednesday or Thursday of the SEC tournament right now.
And wouldn't that be crazy, right? Considering we consistently see Big Blue Nation showing out for basketball. Every time the SEC basketball tournament is in Nashville, it's just overrun with blue. It should be interesting to see whether that happens in Tampa this year. But if Kentucky is in the mix for baseball on Hoover, I'm really going to keep my eye out for a lot of blue shirts, because I think it'll happen the same way given the way those fans travel.
I know one Kentucky fan will be in attendance, and that's myself. And what I'm so excited about with this Kentucky team is they went out and got guys from the transfer portal. They got guys, young talent. And what Nick Mingione has built at Kentucky is something that we've only seen at Ole Miss and Mississippi State. He started young. He started building the roster young. Kentucky fans got impatient. Mitch Barnhart said, "Hey, be patient, be patient." Last year was a fluke year for Kentucky. They made the Supers 3 years ago, and now Kentucky's got a infield lineup that is arguably top 5, top 6 in the SEC, which really doesn't mean a whole lot. But when you look at the overall spectrum of college baseball, you're top 5, top 6, top 7 in the SEC. You're more than likely going to host a regional when we get to June, which sets you up beautifully to make a run at Omaha. And I think the other team that also with Kentucky, another sleeper that not a lot of people are talking about, I've watched all 4 of their games so far, is Texas A&M. Texas A&M, and they always have great pitching, but what they're playing down in Aggie land is small ball. They are going after the crucial hits. They're getting the base hits. They're playing that money ball spectrum, and it's really interesting to watch that in college baseball right now.
Yeah, and I think that's, speaking of that, we see a lot of teams obviously jacking homers. Tennessee did it against, UNC Asheville with 5. And, you see guys just getting these huge hits all over the place, but, you don't really see, I guess, that Billy Bean mentality, if you will, being put into place a whole lot. But I mean, hey, it worked in the early 2000s for the A's and completely changed the game. So why not implement it?
What are you most looking forward to this weekend heading into another weekend of college baseball?
I think, to be quite honest, the warmer weather, just because of the fact that in the first weekend, at least in Knoxville, man, it was cold. That first Friday, it was like 42 degrees, and Tennessee still broke an opening day attendance record with over 4,000 people and just completely shattered the last one. Obviously, that's a tribute to the job that Tony Vitello has done, but I think I'm excited for the warm weather and just to continue to see how this team progresses. And also, like you said, with a couple of those other matchups, especially Kentucky and TCU, I think that could get really, really interesting.
I'd say another 2 weekend matchups that I'm going to be watching out for this weekend is the Round Rock Classic, with Arkansas will play Indiana on Friday, Stanford on Saturday, which is number 6 versus number 2 in the country, and then Louisiana Raging Cajuns. Can't call them Louisiana Lafayette no more. The Raging Cajuns of Louisiana, who are always competing for a super regional, have not crossed that threshold yet. When I look at Arkansas on that three-day tournament there at Round Rock, that's going to be a lot of fun. And I can't wait to I had never thought I'd be saying this. Can't wait to spend my $35 on Flow Sports for the weekend just to watch Arkansas baseball. And another interesting matchup is Alabama traveling to Austin to take on the number 1 ranked Texas Longhorns. Alabama has an unbelievable chance this weekend to really catapult that program heading into the rest of the season.
Yeah, and especially having watched Texas last year in Omaha, Tanner Witt, I remember, was absolutely fantastic, and he has been dealing so far this season as well. So Alabama really has a tough test set out for it this weekend, but like you said, it should be interesting to see whether the Crimson Tide can get it done, because, man, what a big statement that would be for them.
Jake, one more question that we're going to talk about in the next week. We're going to have a little bit of add-on to this. But, Jake, what is your team of the week this past weekend of our opening weekend? And next week, we're going to talk about team of the week plus a player of the week for both you and I.
I think my team of the week this past weekend has to be, and this is not biased, this is just genuinely watching across the conference, it has to be Tennessee, because you come out and you beat Georgia Southern in a shutout on Friday. You come out, you go down 3-0 on Saturday, roar back, win 10-3. You come out on Sunday, just demolish them 14-0. Tennessee beat Georgia Southern by a combined total of 33-3. And I mean, if you have that much production at the plate, with, like I said, with the likes of Ben Joyce, with Chase Dolander, with Chase Burns, and, on down the list of arms, getting close to, or in the case of Joyce, topping triple digits, you have got a seriously dangerous component very early on in this season.
Jake, my team of the week is I have a 1A and 1B. My 1A is going to be the Tennessee Volunteers. I think Tennessee has legitimately the best team in baseball as of right now. Obviously, things can happen, injuries can happen, bullpens can develop. But we're right. You mentioned it. I mean, 33 runs in week 1 of college baseball is an insane stat line. And when you look at what Tony Vitello has built there at Tennessee, it really came to fruition in the Omaha trip, where Tennessee really didn't play as well as they had been playing all season. But this past weekend, man, they look pretty dadgum good. My 1B team, I'm going to go with Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is 1B in the SEC because it's so hard to tell the difference between Ole Miss and Tennessee right now. And just imagine the SEC championship game there in Hoover if Ole Miss played Tennessee for the SEC championship.
Yeah, especially given the mentality of both of these fan bases, right? That Ole Miss has, everybody out in right field. I honestly forget what it's called. But, I mean, the beer showers, imagining that in Hoover combined with what we've seen out of the legends of Lindsey Nelson if they make the trip down there. Those guys have been rowdy early on this season. Tony Vitello talked about last year how much of an environment they created for that, and just made, I forget what he called Lindsey Nelson a hornet's nest, I believe, whenever those guys were rocking and really got the crowd going, and Tennessee feeds off that. So, like you said, as far as the team matchups, but also as far as the crowds, I think it would be a great mix down there in Hoover.
Not to mention, Jake, there is a little bad blood between the Rebels and the Volunteers after what happened in October between Lane Kiffin and the mighty Tennessee Volunteers at Neyland Stadium. So that can also add to the mixture of
it could add to the trash talk a little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
Hey, I'm a Lane Kiffin guy. I love this. Is not a football podcast, but it is well documented that I am a Lane Kiffin fan. I thought it was kind of fun to watch him this season. But it would just add to it. And also what would add to it is have Ole Miss play Mississippi State in a championship type environment, because that whole state would completely shut down. I mean, if you have between the two schools, you had 72,000 people show up to college baseball this weekend. Imagine the crowd that would be in Hoover on Championship Sunday. Yeah,
that would be absolutely insane. But, like you said, knowing the relationship between Tennessee and Lane Kiffin, I was one of the many stragglers, I guess you'd call it, following him out of Neyland to document that trip, and could see the debris raining down ahead of me as he neared the tunnel. So it was insane to watch, and like you said, that would complicate things even more if Tennessee and Ole Miss were to meet in Hoover.
Hey, what about Arkansas, Tennessee? Last thing right there, because there seems to be a little bad blood. I meant to ask you this in our preseason podcast, but there seems to be a little bad blood between the Razorbacks and Volunteers. Why is that?
Yeah, I think that it's attributed to Dave Van Horn's quote about, all the, I guess, shenanigans going on in the dugout, and Tennessee fans, I think, took offense to that, thinking he was talking about them. I heard from someone that he was actually talking in the full quote about Alabama, because he had mentioned being, I think, bested in game one, if I remember correctly. But I think Tennessee fans took that to mean he was talking about them, and kind of like Paul Maneri did last season, talking about the legends of Lindsey Nelson, talking about how just, I guess, horrific would be the word, everything was in Knoxville, and how, nasty the fans were. Tennessee fans have fed off that from Maneri last year, and if they think they're being fed the same kind of rat poison from Dave Van Horn, they're gonna latch onto it. But I don't think he was talking about Tennessee. I think that the fans latched onto it, and there's kind of started to be a little bit of a Twitter beef. Of course, last year, whenever Arkansas came to Knoxville, Tony Vitello and Dave Van Horn got into it a little bit. That I believe it was over I can't remember, maybe a recruiting thing, if I remember right. But given kind of the beef that Tennessee fans have taken with Van Horn's comments, whether they're aimed at Tennessee or not, man, I really wish the Razorbacks were coming to Lindsey Nelson this season. And I think a lot of people were sad when they looked at the schedule and realized they wouldn't be.
Jake, I think you and I can agree. SEC baseball is special. Obviously, everybody knows SEC basketball, SEC football is an amazing thing. But there's something about SEC baseball that is just different from any of those other sports. I don't know if it's because of the level of competition, because of people, media doesn't cover it as closely, but there is such an allure around the sport of baseball in the Southeastern Conference. Would you not agree with that?
Absolutely. And like you said, even though we see the SEC network production, we see, consistently SEC teams end up in Omaha, that I still don't think the sport gets the love it deserves around the conference, aside from, a few select programs. And I think Tennessee is trying to become one of those. And, maybe obviously Mississippi State is one, Ole Miss is one, Arkansas is one, Vanderbilt's definitely one. But, I think that it just reiterates the passion that these fans have and can create around any team that wins on their campus.
He is Jake Nicholas. Jake, tell them where they can follow you on Twitter. Obviously, you and I are at Hit It To Hoover on Twitter, Facebook. And I got to talk to you, but I think we're going to do Instagram as well. And on YouTube, you can check out the podcast at Hit It To Hoover as well.
Yeah, drop me a follow at jnichols_2121. That's at JNICHOLS_2121. For those of you rolling your eyes right now because I spelled it out, it is only because when I played T-ball when I was 5, it was misspelled about 3 times. So I do take offense to that. Thank you very much.
What position did you play in baseball? I got to ask that question.
You know, they always put the worst kid in right field. I played right field.
So you were the right fielder. You were definitely.
I was a consistent right fielder from like kindergarten through 5th grade. So that is a point of pride for me.
So you didn't get to play the fun position at catcher and have body issues literally for the rest of your life with aching knees.
I did not, but I'm guessing by the tone of your voice you have.
Oh, definitely. Like that was the position for me, especially in like little league, man. Like catcher was like, you know me, I'm a big old boy. Like I'm a big old corn-fed boy. I wouldn't let nobody come across that home plate without getting a punch or something thrown at them because I wasn't gonna let them score. That was just who I was.
Yeah, I remember when I was little, I ran from third to home, slid into home, and I was still like 2 feet short of the plate, but I had knocked the catcher on his butt and crawled across the plate to score.
How we got to talking about our little league days is beside me, but I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the It To Hoover podcast with my co-host Jake Nichols and I. It's always an honor to talk with him and talk baseball. We'll be back early next week to talk college baseball, talk midweeks, and we'll do a weekend recap as well.
Sounds good, man.